Destroy all mutants, that has always been the primary objective of the Marvel supervillain Bastion. As a creation of the celebrated duo Scott Lobdell and Pascal Ferry, the character of Bastion originally made a brief appearance in the 52nd issue of X-Men Legacy. However, his first proper appearance was in the 333rd issue of Uncanny X-Men back in the year 1996. Now, while it is true that the defenders of the mutant race or the mutants themselves have gone to extreme lengths to protect themselves against their enemies, the thing with Bastion is that somehow he has always managed to come back. Well, without further ado, we will get into the main contents of today's video, where we will be delving deeper into the origins of the Super Sentinel Bastion. Are you ready? Let's do this then. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Bastion, human and sentinel hybrid origins. A mysterious man going by the name of Sebastian Gilberti quickly attained both power and prominence in the US government sector, after which he started gathering the international anti-mutant strike force known as Operation Zero Tolerance, OZT. No wonder Sebastian, better known as Bastion, seemed to be some kind of an anti-mutant rights activist who appeared to be attempting to save humankind. Months before OZT became public, the X-Men got a whiff of the operation, and this led to Gambit and Phoenix sneaking into a secret meeting which was being held in a sub-basement of the Pentagon in order to learn more about OZT and the leader of the operation, Bastion. While it did not work well for the duo, and by that we'd like to stress on the fact that Phoenix could not even read Bastion's mind, Bastion on the other hand made it very clear that he did not want to be messed with. He even took things up a notch by identifying the mutants amongst the horde of representatives present there. With Professor X willingly turning himself in, post the events of Onslaught, Bastion had him interned inside the OZT facility, coupled with the artificially produced mutant Manites, which was later revealed to help Bastion not only take over the X-Mansion, but also had him to get access to the Xavier Protocols. Now, for those of you who do not know what the Xavier Protocols stand for, please know that it's basically a list of files which had information on every mutant existing on the planet. In addition to these, Bastion was reported to have killed a Daily Bugle journalist who had plans of exposing the presidential candidate Grey Dawn Creed by shedding light on his past life. Bastion also went to the whole extent of creating the Prime Sentinels, secretly implanting the humans with nanotechnology and controlling them. No wonder this was extremely effective. The human appearance worked out in their favor, and they were able to get all the information that they required on the X-Men. Furthermore, it was the assassination of Grey Dawn Creed that escalated humanity's rancid feelings towards the mutants and put into effect Bastion's OZT, thereby attacking mutants everywhere. The operation was successful in capturing several members of the X-Men. It was also around the same time that Bastion attempted to grease the palms of J. Jonah Jameson, only to realize that Jameson was more interested in uncovering a story about him that he had been working on for some time, with Jameson pointing out how Bastion made his way up the ladder without having any evidence of his existence, and adding to this his involvement in the disappearance of the Daily Bugle reporter. He even accused Bastion further of the reporter's murder. Later, upon getting to know about the origin of the Prime Sentinels, the international support for OZT was withdrawn, which ultimately led to the suspension of Bastion's operation. An arrest warrant for Bastion was pushed forward by Senator Robert Kelly, and in due course he was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, while Bastion was in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, one got to learn more and more things about him, but he managed to flee from there before a proper investigation could be carried out. Initially, he came back to the home of Rose Gilberti, the one who had adopted Bastion and also given him the name Sebastian. But with Rose getting inadvertently killed by the authorities in the process, Bastion went into a fit of rage and made his way back into the former OZT facility. There, he came in contact with the Master Mold, or the Sentinel robot, which he had generated the Prime Sentinels from, and ended up absorbing the energy from the Master Mold unit. This in turn drains the Sentinel robot's energy, and he ends up transforming into the Nimrod, or in other words, a very advanced Sentinel prototype from an alternate future. The transformation helped Bastion regain his memories in the process, and we finally learned the truth about him. Bastion wasn't a human to begin with. In fact, he was an amalgam of the Sentinel Master Mold and Nimrod. Bastion had taken on the guise of a human construction worker and had unearthed a module from Master Mold. Now, with Nimrod making physical contact with a module, Master Mold's program began to adopt that of Nimrod's. Shortly after, the heterogeneous symbiotic being was blasted through the Siege Perilous, one that happened to be a mystical artifact acting as a portal to an unknown dimension and capable of judging any who passed through it, reincarnating them into a new life. What emerged as a single being is the Bastion that we know of, with no memory of his past. He was ultimately discovered by Rose Gilberti, who adopted him. It was while Bastion was living with Rose that he started hearing about the country's mutant problem, and unbeknownst to him, his mutant termination directives sort of reactivated. He left Rose and aligned himself with other high-profile anti-mutant fanatics like Grey Dawn Creed and his anti-mutant hate group Friends of Humanity. Post regaining his identity as a Sentinel, Bastion attempted to alter Machine Man into a Sentinel Supreme, but with the timely intervention of Cable, he could not carry out his crusade against the mutants. Bastion was recaptured by S.H.I.E.L.D. only to be beheaded later by Wolverine, who was at the time transformed into Death, one of the Horsemen of Apocalypse. Marvelous story arc of Bastion. The remains of Bastion were discovered by Mainspring, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was in charge of a project called the Gatekeepers. Even though Bastion was rebuilt, they soon lost control of him, and with Bastion having a new body and programming, he became known as Template. Some time passed by and Carol Danvers got in touch with the X-Men inquiring about Bastion. Wolverine, Shadowcat, and Gambit broke into the government facility to retrieve their stolen computer files, and while the trio was successful in reclaiming the files, they were confronted by Bastion or Template, who showed them misleading holograms of events and lies about the other members, thereby instilling doubts and fear amongst themselves. Resurrection. It was after the events of the Messiah Complex that the paramilitary or terrorist organization of the Purifiers infiltrated a highly fortified S.H.I.E.L.D. facility with the help of some double agents inside. The objective of the mission was to recover Bastion's head from there and reattach it to Nimrod's body. Right after Bastion got reactivated, he notified the Purifiers about the new X-Force mutant team. The obsessed mutant hunting robot even went to the extent of concluding that the X-Men were the greatest mutant threat to the Purifiers' schemes, and that apparently there was no earthly force capable of assuring the elimination of the X-Men. Mind you, this was just a part of his plan because all he wanted to do was bring Magus, the techno-organic patriarch of an alien civilization, into the cross. Of course, it was disclosed way later, we may add, that what Bastion had come across at the pit of the ocean wasn't the original Magus, but one of his children in a rather confused state of mind. In an attempt to end the mutant population, Bastion took extreme measures. He did not just stop at recruiting some of the most renowned foes of the X-Men, he also brought back to life the ones that had died and took control of them by having them exposed to the techno-organic virus. As part of his first move, he was successful in catching hold of many mutants and jabbing them with a batch of the legacy virus in order to make them go batshit crazy and kill themselves along with the humans in the process. The United Nations was left with no other choice but to come up with a mutant response division, or in other words, a military unit that was primarily assigned to hunt down the mutants. X-Men Second Coming. As per the events of this storyline, Bastion was seen forming an alliance with all anti-mutant fanatics, which included Stephen Lang, Cameron Hodge, Bolivar Trask, William Stryker, and Grey Dawn Creed, addressing themselves as the Human High Council. They had joined forces with the MRD, or Mutant Response Division to be more precise, and to this Leper Queen's Sapien League, the Purifiers, and Grey Dawn Creed's Friends of Humanity. The goal was pretty simple: hunt down and kill the mutant messiah, Hope Summers, who was also known as the Harbinger of Death for Humanity. Resorting to the techno-organic virus that Bastion had made use of to resurrect the dead, he tried locating Hope. Upon being able to trace Hope, who at the time was being taken by Rogue and Nightcrawler to Utopia, Bastion ambushes them. The resulting fight led to the death of Nightcrawler, who managed to teleport Hope and Rogue to Utopia before he died. This left Bastion no other choice but to set in motion a contingency plan. Bastion trapped the X-Men as well as the mutants under an energy dome-like structure and opened a portal, from which emerged a multitude of Nimrods who started attacking them. Not able to carry on with the powerful assault, Cypher and Cable went to the future in order to reset the signal and in the process crush the Nimrod Master Molds, but with Cable ultimately sacrificing himself in the act, the powers of Hope manifested and she ended up obliterating Bastion along with his dome with a single energy blast. The aftermath. It should not come as a shock to you at all when we tell you that Bastion managed to survive Hope's devastatingly powerful attack by triggering his temporal drives and escaping into the future. But having said that, let us not disregard the fact that Bastion was severely damaged in the process and that time travel had affected his systems. With Bastion arriving at a time when mutants were still endangered, he made up his mind to defend the mutants there by reprogramming Sentinels and helping him carry out his new mission. Eventually, he came to the present and was approached by the time-displaced X-Men. This just proved that Bastion's real mission all this while was to safeguard the mutants till their population rose to a level where he could simply wipe them all out. While the X-Men attempted to fight him, Bastion left from there along with the Sentinels while realizing that it was pointless to fight with them. Later, with Hydra taking over USA and under the leadership of Captain America, who had been transformed by a cosmic cube, the mutants were given a new region so that they would not get into the way of the new regime of Hydra. Bastion aligned with Havoc, Emma Frost, and Miss Sinister in order to create the Mothervine virus, one that would basically act as a catalyst for artificial mutations and on a global scale, if we may add. Since Bastion's programming was unrecognizable to the Prime Sentinels and they considered him as a threat in spite of him being their creators in the first place, Bastion went with Havoc to take charge of an army of Prime Sentinels. Post the global release of the Mothervine virus, Emma Frost turned against Miss Sinister and the rest of her alliance after learning that the mutants that were being generated by the virus were capable of having their will subjugated. It was during the conflict between Bastion's group and the X-Men that Emma was set free, which resulted in the mutant Zorn making up his mind to sacrifice himself and unleashing the full power of the black hole within him. This drew Bastion in and by the looks of it destroyed both of them. What makes Bastion super deadly? To begin with, Bastion was an amalgam of Master Mold and Nimrod. Naturally, this made him exhibit a horde of powers, all aiming towards hunting and eliminating threats, or in simple words, mutants. Bastion had the capability of locating all mutants, mind you, within an area of 20 miles, weighing about 375 pounds and standing at a height of 6 foot 3 inches. He had on display super strength, speed, endurance, the power of flight thanks to his jet boots, and the ability to shoot disintegrating blasts via his chest and hands. The Master Mold programming within him gives Bastion full control over every Sentinel, and he also has the power to create Prime Sentinels as mentioned before. Bastion also had the power to access data and information of any computer system, and adding to this the ability to control the programming as well. Speaking of the Nimrod programming within him, it granted him super intelligence and at the same time helped him gauge mutant threat levels as well as put countermeasures into effect when attacked. His artificial healing factor kept him immune from most physical attacks. Bastion appearance in video games. Voiced by Don Morrow, Bastion appears as the main villain in the 2002 fighting game X-Men Next Dimension. Here in his character profile, it is hinted that his actual name is Sebastian Gilbert. This version is seen ripping information out of Forge's mind and planting devices in his Sentinels so as to depower a mutant. It is at Asteroid M that his character gets destroyed either by Phoenix or Magneto. Voiced by Alistair Duncan, he appears as one of the bosses in the 2005 action role-playing game X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse. His version happens to be an anti-mutant activist who has plenty of Sentinels to do his bidding. Voiced by Keith Zarabaika, he has appeared in the action role-playing video game based on the X-Men comic book series known as X-Men Destiny. This version is reported to have killed Professor X right in the beginning. And last but not the least, Bastion has also made an appearance as a group boss in Marvel Avengers Alliance. Well, that was the origin story of Bastion, and with this we finally come to the end of our video here. So, what are your thoughts on Bastion? Hit us in the comments section, and also stay tuned with us for more exciting content. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.